Hello, I'm Admiral McFish, and this is a tutorial on how to hack and play as Yami in an emulated version of Tatsunoko vs. Capcom. As always, if you haven't seen the very first video I did on the basics of boss hacking, I'd recommend going back and watching that first. It just kind of explains the bases of what we do here, and you might be a little lost otherwise. For this, you're going to need three things. You're going to need an emulator with the game open. I'm using Dolphin. I don't know if there are any others for Wii titles, but I'd recommend Dolphin anyway, because you can play both GameCube and Wii games on it, and it just seems to be the most stable out there. You will also need a hacking program, such as ArtMoney or Cheat Engine. I usually recommend ArtMoney. It's just a bit more user-friendly. When you open it, make sure to select the emulator here in the select process part. You just need to do that before any of this can work, basically. You'll also need the character values in a Word document or something, but don't worry about those. I'll provide them in the description. You just need them because we'll be doing the standard method of picking a character, going into training mode, searching for their value, picking a different character, filtering, and so on and so forth until we find the relevant character addresses. So let's get underway with that, and we'll just go into training. I always recommend doing training. It just means it's easier to get back to the menu. It just makes the process a little bit quicker in general. Let's go for Doronjo. Right, and we will initially search. You always search initially, and then every other value after that you're filtering for. So we will search for value 6, because that is Doronjo's value, as you can see. But this address range thing, always change it to all. It doesn't work if it's an emulator mode. No clue why. As I've said in other videos, it's very strange, but it just doesn't. You just have to set it to all. So her value is 6, so we will search initially for value 6. And then we will go back to the character selection screen. We'll go for someone else. We'll go for Tekkaman this time. Alright, skip all this. Okay, and Tekkaman's value, as you can see, is 3, so we're going to filter now. Again, as I said before, you search initially and then you filter for all subsequent values. So we'll filter for 3 this time. Don't be afraid to do that just a couple of times, just helps to narrow it down a bit more. But make sure it is the same value as the character that you're using when you do so. Then we'll go back to the character selection screen. Go for Jun The Swan this time. Right, and Jun's value is 8, so we will filter for 8. Cool, getting there. And yeah, this is the process as it is with most games. It's just going back and forth, filtering for it, and you slowly begin to narrow down the addresses because you are finding certain addresses with certain things that would only appear, or certain values that would only appear in certain addresses, and that allows you to access the address and then force it to load the value that will allow you to access the boss, as with most games. I hit Volt Nut. Right, MegaMan is value 18, so we'll go for 18, filter for 18. Okay, and I'll just do one more, but I think as I said before with 3D games, you end up with so many more values than 2D games. The 2D games, it's like 1 or 2 at the most. In 3D games, it can be 5 to 10 to 20 here. I've seen 40, sometimes 50 before. It's a bit crazy, really. Let's go with Ryu this time. Right, and Ryu is value 12, so we'll filter for 12. Yeah, same as before. Yes, that then brings us to the fun task of trial and error, which unfortunately is quite common when you start playing later and later games, or trying to hack sort of more recent titles, basically. So what I usually do when I have like 20 titles is I'll just pick 5 for a start, and then I will go from there. Now, the fact that some of these have defaulted to 0 usually implies what it is that we'll need to do. So we'll take a look at the ones that are 0, and that usually implies, basically, they will probably be the ones that actually affect it, and the rest will just sort of follow suit. So that's 23. If we try freezing that into place, let's see if it has any effect. Oh, I think it might have done. No, interesting. Okay. So that was clearly trying to do something, but I didn't choose another set of values, it seems. That's interesting. Okay, so really it is just a process of trial and error. So what I tend to do when I have like 5 to 10 to 20 of these is just take 5 and then just put in the value that you want to play as the boss into 5 of them, freeze them into place, try those out. If they don't work, then just move on to the next 5. Or just begin to fiddle around until I eventually find what the addresses actually are to play as a character. So let's just put 23 into the first 5 here. I'll click value 1 and then shift click to highlight all from value 1 to value 5, and then right click and freeze those in place. You can also do this just by clicking the boxes on the side, but that's a little bit quicker. And we're trying to force the game to load Yami, or the first form for Yami anyway, so we'll see if this has any effect. Ah, yeah, there we are. Yep, there's Yami. Sweet. So yeah, other games it can be a little bit more complex. Sometimes it's like you find 20 values, but you can only use 4 of them. They're like scattered throughout the list that you get. This one's really easy because, yeah, just those first 5 seem to affect it as far as I can tell. Might be different for you, potentially speaking, but it should be more or less the same as this. The first 5 you find should affect it. If they don't, as I said before, just unfreeze them, move on to the next 5, put in the value that you want to get, so 23, 24, 25, freeze the values in place after typing them in, test it out. If it doesn't work, rinse and repeat, trial and error, as I said, just until you get it. So this time, let's do Yami 2. Yep, there's Yami 2. Or his second form, whatever you want to call it. So yep, that's simple. As I said before, this is a method for an emulator. On the Wii itself, you would need to use some sort of other device, basically. I think for the Wii, thinking back to it, there were certain mods and everything that you could use, but I don't know of any nowadays personally, so this is why I'm specifically doing a method for an emulator, as I tend to do, because it's just a little easier to do and it's preserved better as well. And to be honest, I mean, if you have a decent enough PC, you should probably just be emulating this kind of stuff nowadays anyway. So yeah, it's that simple. It's a little bit more trial and error than some other games. It takes a bit longer just because you have to deal with all the loading. But once you've found those addresses, that's it. You can put in whoever you want to. You can even put in the unlockable characters if you want to do that. But of course this method is mostly to play as Yami, because you never get to play as him otherwise. Hope this helps you out. Any queries, any issues, anything of the sort, please do let me know below. This should work for you, but if anything doesn't work, please do let me know, and I'll make a sort of updated tutorial or anything else that's needed just to kind of go through it. The problem with sort of later games like this, as you'll see if you've watched any of my other videos and sort of more recent titles, is that they are just less precise in all the titles. In all the titles you'd have like 1 or 2 addresses, you know exactly that would affect it and that would work seamlessly every time. These are pretty predictable, they're pretty precise, but they're not as precise as they could be. So it is a little bit more of a guessing game, but again, trial and error, and you should get there in the end. Yeah, any issues, please do let me know below. Any other queries, yada yada yada, I'd like to hear them certainly. And as always, thank you very much for watching.